Matt Rees is the Director of ASN, or Australian Sports Nutrition. It supplies sport and health supplements across Australia and the US, as well as sports nutrition advice. So if you're an everyday Aussie wanting to get healthy, or you're a professional athlete with pretty specific objectives in mind, ASN's aim is to help you on your health and fitness journey by talking to you about the right supplements for you. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
You only get one choice here, a pre-workout supplement or post-workout supplement.
My head says I should say post-workout, but I'm a bit of a stim junkie, so my heart says pre-workouts. I'm known to probably have too many pre-workouts over the years, and I've become a bit of a stim junkie. So it's something that I need to, as I'm getting older, something I need to cut back on a bit. But no, in terms of advice, you need post-workout. You got to recover from your workouts.
He could cheat and do the post-workout and do about 20 coffees beforehand, because this stuff is amazing. So it gets you out of bed though.
That's right. Yeah. You can become reliant on it, but yeah, if you're getting up and training early, there's nothing like a good pre-workout to give you that bit of extra energy to get going over morning.
Someone like you know, you are an athlete, actually former athlete I say, but I use that word very lightly because you just recently won, what is it, the Dash for Cash in Perth, is that right? Tell us about that.
Oh, mate, to be honest, I race in the Masters now, so I don't really class it as a proper win. And any Masters racing, you're doing for enjoyment. So you don't like to sort of claim too many wins as a Masters win, but it's just a race week they have in Perth every year. And they have a couple of sort of longer races and they have a few shorter races. And I was lucky enough to stumble over the line in one of the shorter ones and have a victory. But as you say, when you're racing in the 50s category, it's not a proper victory. There's plenty of blokes on the beach that can still give you a flog.
Masters or not, no way.
Because your body is still letting you get over the line.
I was thinking your
first.
Brain doesn't stop getting competitive. So, at that starting line, you're always going to be like, I want to win this.
Yeah, as I said, you're really just doing it for enjoyment now. And of course, when you race, you want to hurt yourself and do your best, because generally you're there racing with blokes you've been racing against for 30 years, and you still like to have bragging rights at the bar afterwards when you're having a beer. So yeah, it's always good to get a win.
How is the body?
Oh, mate, I think I'm like most 50-year-olds. It's slowing down, but I've sort of never really had a break from training and competing. So I think that helps me a lot. I've had sort of a few major injuries that I've never had before over the last sort of year and a bit, which was a bit of a learning curve for me. But
How old do you feel?
To be honest, I mean, us males always say in the head we don't think any differently to when we were 18,
Still
do we?
20, yeah.
But I don't know. I still think I'm as mobility-wise, I'm probably not as good. Like, I've still got the aches and pains, but in terms of strength and things like that, I still feel as strong as what I did in my probably mid-30s. Mid-30s, I think I can sort of, strength-wise in the gym and that sort of thing, I'm probably as strong. The old the really hard efforts these days, like if you're racing against the young kids over 3 or 4 minutes, so that's what hurts. And sometimes you sort of think, the heart's racing and you think, is this really healthy, what I'm doing here? But yeah, I'm still going, still battling away.
So we grew up in that era of the Trevor Hendys, the Guy Andrews, those sorts of guys. Who was your favourite back then? You would have raced against these guys.
Oh, mate, I was, as I always say to people, I was lucky that I came through in the golden era probably of Ironman racing when Uncle Toby's were putting a lot of money into the sport. And I was just a hacker who was lucky enough to go along for the ride. So I got to know all those blokes pretty well and racing them all the time. And in saying that, I don't think Trevor Hendy would ever lay awake at night the night before a race worrying if Matt Rees was going to beat him the next day. I think he knows he had me covered. But they were all great blokes, and I did a lot of training with Guy Andrews. He was an animal, and I'm actually speaking to him this weekend up at the Gold Coast. So yeah, they're all great guys. We still all see one another at surf carnivals and have a beer and a catch up, which is one of the beauties of the sport.
You're right about that golden era. Those names you mentioned were household names, mainly because of Uncle Toby's and the ads and what they were willing to put into it. That's changed a bit over time, has it? Does that make you a bit sad?
It does make me. Yeah, it does make me sad as someone. I mean, I've been doing the sport. I started nippers when I was 3, and so I've been doing the sport since I was 3 years old at Swansea Belmont Surf Club. You know, dragging along with my older brothers and that when they first started, and I was only 3, and so I've never really missed a year. But yeah, the sport did drop off there for a long time, and it has dropped off. At the moment, it's sort of, there's a couple of big supporters in the sport at the moment. There's a company called Shaw and Partners, and they've sort of started getting behind Ironman racing and that again, and they're putting on this Summer of Surf series. They're putting on some really good races, and that all the good guys are going to, and there's some decent prize money, and they're holding it in. That's where we were this weekend, up on the Gold Coast, and there was big surf, and it was my youngest daughter was sort of competing in the youngest age groups, but to watch the guys in the open races, I really enjoyed it. It was sort of, they were getting pumped. It was big and scary, and they were getting pumped out the back, so it was great. It was great to sort of have that atmosphere again at the beach.
So you got the thrill of, racing. You go through that career of being an athlete, and then you kind of hit that stage where you go, now the athlete becomes, a second choice to maybe professional career. So what was the transition? What was that like? And then eventually starting ASN.
I mean, in terms of the transition, it wasn't, it wasn't difficult for me really, because again, I would never class myself as an elite athlete, and I suppose I just love doing it. I love training. I love the racing. We were travelling around the country and getting trips overseas to race and all that sort of thing, and I just really wanted to hang on to that and do that for as long as possible. And I was sort of lucky that I lived at home with my parents. They were very supportive, and so I almost just treated it. I could earn enough money out of it back then where it was almost like a part-time job while I was at uni. So instead of going and working at the pub or like most blokes were doing, I earned enough doing Ironman racing to sort of, it was like I just sort of had a part-time career. So I was always studying. I went okay. I went pretty good at school, and I sort of started a commerce degree, and I started it full time, but then I realised with the training, I thought, geez, I've got to milk this as long as possible. And so I dropped back to part-time.
The training, not the commerce.
Yeah, that's right, the training. So I dropped back to sort of part-time uni, which is a massive 8 hours a week. So, and as I said, I was lucky enough that mum and dad supported me. And so I suppose I really dragged out that study side of it for as long as possible.
Did you finish?
Yeah, I finished. Yeah. So
I'm impressed you got to the end.
Well, actually, what I did was I was worse than that, because I finished my commerce degree, and then I thought, I've got to keep studying. So I did a CPA, and then I did a master's. So I've got all these qualifications, but I always say I'm the world's dumbest accountant, because I've got all these qualifications, but I never really went and worked as an accountant. So,
except that would have set you up really well for starting your own business, surely.
Yeah, and that's what I mean in terms of the transition. It made it easy because I never really thought in my head that I'm an athlete. So it wasn't like you see these guys, because a lot of the guys I was racing with and was good mates with, they really did struggle with that transition. And you see it all the time with athletes, they really identify themselves as an athlete. And that transition to normal life, it is a difficult one for them, and a lot of them struggle with it. And
it's really interesting. I'm sensing like it was a hobby that just got in the way of life for a bit there. You still did the study and did all the serious stuff, and never saw yourself as that professional athlete, but managed to do really well, but it was just a hobby that got in the way.
But mind you, I suppose in my head, I enjoyed the study was getting in the way.
Yeah.
If I was good enough, I would have been a full-time athlete. Don't worry about that. But I suppose I was at least smart enough to know that
to do both.
You're probably not going to beat Trevor Hendy, so we need to find a plan B.
But in saying that plan B is now probably a superior outcome in hindsight, because you learnt, work ethic, you learnt, to be content in where you are. You didn't identify yourself solely as an athlete, so therefore you had a bigger picture view than most. So that was, ASN eventually started. How did it start?
Well, I'm in business with my older brother, Simon, and he actually started it part-time he was in the building game. So he worked for insulation companies for a lot of years as sort of sales manager and that sort of thing. And he was a pretty good salesman in his day. And he was right into his bodybuilding type training. Back then it was, all the sort of the bodybuilding, and he was right into that. And again, you couldn't get supplements in Australia. And we used to get our uncle owned a news agency, so we used to get a lot of the magazines, and you get the muscle mags and all those sort of magazines, and he was right into those, and he started just ordering supplements from the States, and that progressed to where he was getting them and just sort of selling them to mates at the gym, and then after a while he sort of thought, I might open a shop, and he sort of did that, and again he opened one on the Gold Coast because he liked going to the Gold Coast, partying on the weekends. It was a good excuse to go to the Gold
Coast. Dodge, that'll help, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good excuse to go to the Gold Coast. So he set one up on the Gold Coast, and he started to open a couple of stores, and I was actually working for a financial advisor in town who I'd been working for a while, and I was about to buy into that business. And Simon sort of said, I'm not real good at the admin sort of bookkeeping side of this business. It was getting a bit, because the business was growing quickly, and he was sort of like, I need to start taking this seriously. So, I went into the business. I went into the business with him. So,
why did it grow so quickly? What changed for gym goers that all of a sudden supplements were an important part?
Well, one, I think it was just sort of a knowledge thing, and sort of people just became more aware that these supplements actually work. You can get these supplements and they will actually help me put on muscle or recover from training and that sort of thing. So I think there was sort of that the market was becoming more aware of what was happening. The market in America just was growing, and I suppose it was just one of, I don't really know why it sort of took off in that stage, but I think it was just health and fitness has become a lot more important. I think as a society, even though we're sort of they say we're getting unhealthier, but it seems as though which seems to mean more and more people go, well, geez, I've got to get healthy.
Yeah. And are willing to spend money on it.
Yeah.
Because education probably was the key factor. Back in I remember going through, my footy career, and it wasn't around until later on. And what you associated with bodybuilding or things like that was almost like steroids. It was bad. It was always that sort of stigma around it. Whereas supplements education came into play, which was like, hey, these are actually healthy products. These will help you recover. These will help you perform, but not in the way that people used to think back then. And I think it did come down to education, didn't it?
And it did. And I suppose that's what we've always prided ourselves on, the education side of things and the knowledge of things, because and this is particularly the case with Simon, because he's right, he's 5 years older than me, but he's still right into his training, still trains bloody 2-3 times a day, and he's never stopped either, and he sort of looks, he's fit. And so he basically just wanted products that he wanted to use, and that's what he sort of started selling, and that's how the business has really developed. It's like, and I suppose I've always been the same, because I'm into my training. We sell products that we want to take. And that's where I suppose we think we're different to a lot of, over the years, we see a lot of businesses, and as we've grown, you go to sort of a trade show, or you become, you go out looking for products overseas, and you're talking to these blokes about their fitness products and that sort of thing. You're like, you're 30 kilo overweight. It's sort of, they're just there to make money. And they're sort of designing a product based on a price point and how much money can we make out of this product, whereas we've always designed our products on stuff that we want to use.
Because, would you say, bold statement, but I probably believe this, that if you were an athlete now and you didn't take supplements versus you did, I don't think you could compete. Is that right?
I mean,
just due to not so much the performance, but more the recovery.
Again, when you're talking about elite athletes, when every % of a percent counts, then you need that. I mean, we always say, we say, now we're sort of moving into that general health market. For the majority of our customers, they need to start with the foundations of you're eating right and you're doing some exercise. And then supplements become, okay, well, how I want to lose that extra couple of kilo, or I want to put on that extra couple of kilo of muscle, or I'm feeling a bit tired, or I can't sleep at night. And so they're always, as I said, they supplement your healthy lifestyle. And so, you know, I'd be sort of lying to say, oh, the average person has to take supplements and that sort of thing. But for an elite athlete, I mean, things like creatine, which we were talking about before, I mean, it's one of the most researched products, supplements out there, and it definitely will help you in your, you know, recovery, most sports performance activities.
Crazy. And so, you know, athletes, the NRLs, the AFLs, the swimmers, all those sorts of guys, how much do you need to have input or, help work with those guys closely to get the best outcome for them? Because it's not a one-stop shop. It's not one, size fits all. What's that process like?
Well, I mean, again, it's like anything. It really depends on their goals. So, you might be working, you might have someone who comes in and they want to move into the front row in footy. So their footy coach has said, look, mate, you need to put on a bit of size. So they're trying to bulk up. So obviously there's really, your certain products, you got to make sure they're having there enough carbs, enough protein, creatine, to just help them put on size. Whereas you might get someone else who's coming in and they might be trying to make a weight category for fighting. And obviously what you would give them is totally different. Or you might just have, a busy mum coming in and they're feeling a bit flat for energy and that sort of thing. And so you can look at how their sleep is, all that sort of stuff.
We'll throw in the mix, elite athlete, then weekend athlete. I remember when we were going through the juniors at the Knights, I was that scared to take a Panadol because a cough syrup had, I think, pseudoephedrine in it, and that was banned, and then another one wasn't, and all these little things that you've got to consider. It's huge.
Are there rules around the supplements? Like, I know they're not drugs, but are there some things that some people can't take at that elite level?
Oh, there's plenty. I mean, at the elite level where they're getting drug tested. Yeah, there's
stuff you can't sell them.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff. But I mean, the majority of sports supplements in Australia sort of fall within the food guidelines, and there's not too many products that an athlete
can get you into trouble.
Yeah, can get you into trouble. The main risk, I think, for elite athletes is if they're taking they're looking for hardcore stimulant products, hardcore test boosting products that generally come from the US, and it's really if they're getting made in a manufacturing facility that they might be making other stuff and their certifications mightn't be right, and this is where I do have I know you hear athletes get test positive and they say, oh, it was a tainted supplement, and I know most people go, that's rubbish, they're taking it, but I do have some sympathy for those athletes because we've met with a lot of manufacturers in the US, and over the in 20 plus years, you deal with all types of people over there, and it is possible that when they're making their products, they're not thinking about a swimmer or a football player in Australia that could potentially get in trouble, and for some of them, it's career ending.
And that's where I see the big point of difference with ASN, because you've always been somebody that's researched massively, constant education for yourself, so then to educate the market. And that has been why you've been an industry leader. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think that's over the years, we talked about initially we were really just targeted at that bodybuilding market, and obviously they're at the more extreme end of people's body goals, really. And that's probably one of the big transitions in the whole industry is as it's gone more mainstream, you have to adjust your offering and your products for those people. And obviously, if a mum comes in and a 16-year-old son or daughter's swimming training 5 mornings a week and they just say, they're just hungry all the time. Obviously, they want to know that what they're giving them is safe and there's nothing in it that's going to hurt them. And that's, obviously we pride ourselves on either sourcing quality products like that fit that goal or we get them made.
And so it's a tough market you operate in because it wasn't originally around, and then you are an industry leader, and then there's a lot of people that, sort of copycat, if you like, and you see them coming to the market, they think, I don't even need a shop front, I don't need a research, and they can see, because I'm assuming there's healthy margins in product, but when you do it well, that margin gets smaller because it's education, it's shop fronts, it's people, it's constant research. How do you combat that? And how do you always hold a good brand and good market share compared to those people?
I mean, it is difficult, and as you said, the market has become very competitive. You know, when you've you got sort of supermarkets, pharmacy, all those types of businesses selling supplements these days, and they are obviously all cut into your business. I mean, the thing we've always tried to do is be in charge of our own destiny. And so when we originally opened up, you know, we were like any business, and we were just sort of buying products off suppliers, and the suppliers sort of tried to push you around a bit and, you know, not give you products sometimes, or, you know, they'd impose certain rules on you and that sort of thing. So we went and thought, well, let's go and source our own products. Let's go and find the products that we want to sell, that we know the market wants, that we're using. And so we started back in the early days going to America. We'd go to the big trade shows in America, and we started importing products ourselves. And we also said, well, let's manufacture our own products. We want products that have got, you know, ingredient X, Y, and Z in them, because that's what we want to use. So Simon went and found a manufacturer, and we started making our own products. And again, that sort of helped us stay ahead of the game. But then I suppose everyone thinks, let's start making our own products too. And so they started making their own products. And then we started to have issues where the manufacturer, you're relying on them to put as quality ingredients in them as what you want. And so we started to have some issues where our product quality wasn't the same. And, you know, you sort of start to go, why does that taste different to last time? Or why is the colour off? Or why, you know? And so we started our own manufacturing facility. So we went in partners. There's a brand called International Protein, and they were one of the big providers in the market. They're still going strong, and they've got a very good brand. And they were having the same issues with their manufacturer. They sort of said, we're just not getting reliable manufacturing. And one of them was a food scientist, and the other one had run manufacturing facilities. And they sort of said, well, let's team up with your business and our business. We think we'll be able to sort of start a manufacturing facility. And we sort of thought, oh yeah, that's great. You know, at least we know exactly where the raw materials are coming from. We know exactly what's going in our products. And I think we started that in a small shed at Ormo on the Gold Coast in sort of 2009. And now we've sort of got a 3,000 square metre facility. And, you know, I think it's blends. I think we blend about 120 tonne of sports supplements a month sometimes. Oh, sorry, about 10. No, what is it up to? It's up to about, I think it does about 10 tonne a month of sports supplements. Or even
and we're talking like powder, so that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's getting sent to, you know, now we sort of send products to India, China, Asia. So it's sort of, but we know what's in the products, which is the main reason we did it. But that side of the business has really taken off.
And all of that gives you an edge. And you've obviously evolved and changed with the times and the technologies and things like that. Why still have stores? You've got 30-something of them. Is it still important that you have a presence in shopping centres, etc.?
Yeah, we always believe that bricks and mortar retail is a tough gig these days. It's very
because of the
competitive.
overheads.
Yeah, your costs are high. It's very competitive. But we also feel that does give you credibility. You know, it does sort of...
Do you have enough credibility after 21 years to just go online now? The customer base is there. They know who you are. You've got the marketing and brand behind you.
I think in our industry and because of our business model where, you know, we want to educate people still want to come in and talk to you.
Of course.
And if you've got store managers that are educated, people get excited about their training. They want to, you know, come in, and if you've got sort of store managers that can listen to them, they can tell you that, you know, I'm having this problem, or look at the gains I've made, and the store manager can sort of work with them and say, well, give this a try, or maybe don't try that, or try this training. We just find that things like the body scans, you know, they can come in, they can get a body scan done, see what their body fat is, all that sort of stuff. We've just found that the bricks and mortar, we feel, is an important part to our business. Obviously now we're not opening as many stores as we used to. And while we're sort of looking for locations all the time. Probably the whole COVID situation made us become a bit more choosier with where we open.
Did any close?
We did. We closed some over COVID. I mean, we kept the majority of them open, and I mean, COVID was tough and sales took a hit. We kept the majority of them open, and to be honest, without the job seeker support, we would have struggled to keep a lot of them open.
Because you talked about the value chain, really, which is streamlining distribution or operating further down the chain in manufacturing your own product. So you pick up a little bit of margin there. You pick up control, which is really good. However, how was that affected during COVID? Because supply was an issue. But as the manufacturer, did that help or did that hinder?
It definitely helped us having those sort of strings you could pull if, in terms of, because as you say, when supply is limited, if you're sort of to an extent got part of that supply chain, you can obviously prioritise where you need it to go over other areas of the business. So it does give you that bit more flexibility. Because
you would have been torn between we want the supply versus we need to still look after people who we supply to. Is that right? And that constant battle of, self-value versus a longer game with other people you deal with.
Yeah, and that is probably the challenge of our business now, because as you're not just a retailer, you're wearing a number of different hats, and you've got to, and especially if you've got partners in those businesses, you've got to put on your different hat when you're making a decision. And as you say, if I've got my retailer hat on, I'm obviously saying, well, we want all that stock, we need it. But if I've got my manufacturer's hat on, it's like, well, geez, they're a good customer of our manufacturing business and they need stock as well. So we've got to, you've got to juggle those relationships, and I suppose it's just a matter of communicating with people and coming up with solutions that suit everybody.
And so additionally to that, you talked about the value chain. Another big thing is marketing for businesses. You could have the best product, but if no one knows about it, it doesn't exist. So marketing for you guys, I see that, obviously we talked about buildings, really important. And how important has been, further education, independent articles versus social media versus influencer marketing? What's been the big sort of marketing area that has provided the greatest gain for you?
Good question. I mean, for us, because sometimes it's difficult to know the answer, and I think that's the challenge for a lot of business with marketing, is what's actually working for us. And I know
that thing you spend a lot of money on that transactionally sometimes you can't tell.
Yeah, and that's an area where I suppose myself personally, and especially as we've gone into this more modern social media and all that sort of stuff, which I'm not good at. And I always say one of my strong points is I know that I'm no good at it. So we always say I'm consciously incompetent, so I know I'm hopeless, which I think is better than being
ignorant to the fact that you are.
Yeah. So, but the marketing has always been a struggle, and in terms of where's your best bang for buck. And I suppose the benefit we've had is the fact that we've been around for 20 odd years. We've got a really good organic community. And that's, I suppose, the solid foundation of our business. And typically when we look at our e-commerce performance and that sort of thing, it is fundamentally that organic side of the business which is dominating. And so for us, it's constantly trying to go into new areas and go, well, okay, what return are we going to get on that? But as you know, sometimes it's a real challenge to know what return you are actually getting.
You knew to adopt and embrace social media pretty early, get people tagging you and showing your products off, even if you didn't have control over it, but you had customers that were keen to tell people where they bought it, things like that.
Yeah, well, again, personally, I'm not great at that, but in the early days, Simon was really good at that, and he would just, even sort of when the Facebook algorithms would basically, if you didn't spend money, you didn't get anything. And Simon would just spend hours and hours sort of going through and linking up with personal trainers and, you're looking great. Where do you get your subs from? And, might be able to look after you, and sort of just basically using it, networking. And that's how the work that sort of him and his wife did with that in the early days, it did grow that organic base. And I suppose now we're trying to look at other areas outside the digital. And as I said, we're always looking with our service offering in terms of, things like the body scanners in all the stores. We've got an app, like a fitness app that we use that people can get their diet plans and all that sort of stuff. We were one of we got into the body challenges pretty early, and in the early days we were sort of running those body challenges, which were really successful for us. We were sort of getting thousands of people sign up to those, and you'd sort of run that 12-week challenge after Christmas, and we had some great success with things like that. But like anything, everyone else starts doing it and it becomes a bit of a mosh pit, and then you've got to sit back and say, well, okay, what's the next thing? And sometimes
true.
Yeah, sometimes you try next things and they're a dud, and you've got to learn from it.
Or you try other things and then people copy them as well because they're so good.
Well, Roman Brady was on the podcast, and he talked about it's a community. People want to belong. Yes, they want to go to the gym, or yes, they want to buy supplements, but they want to feel like they belong to something, and they want to, work together and have that, sort of motivation as well, because, motivation doesn't last long for many people. So that's a handy thing for you to have, is those challenges and feeling part of a community. And like you said, that's been your greatest advantage or your greatest asset in your marketing, yeah?
Yeah, it has, and that's what we've always sort of focused on, that real community, that community feel, and getting back to you talk about the bricks and mortar stores, and if your store managers or franchise owner is good at that, they can build a real community around that store, and it does, in an industry where there's not many barriers to entry, that community can give you a bit of a barrier to entry.
In the 21 years of ASN, was COVID the biggest challenge, biggest battle, or have there been others?
Oh, we've had, it's like any business person, it feels like that, you can sort of feel like there's always a challenge, and I think any business, there's challenges every day. I mean, COVID was the biggest, for me personally, the biggest eye-opener in terms of, we need to think about some of these decisions we're making.
We're not invincible.
Yeah. Like in the early days, we could just open up a store and it didn't matter what the rent deal was. It was like, we'll be right. Let's just open them. Yep, sign the deal. Let's get it done. Let's get the store open, and the store would pump. But as we said, as the markets became, and we were destination stores, and people, it was not unusual. People would drive an hour to your store, but now you can get supplements at the supermarket. You can buy them direct online. You can get them, at every pharmacy. And so convenience became more of a factor. And that's where, we'd always stayed away from shopping centres. And then so we thought a lot, well, we've got to start putting our product in front of the customer. As you've got to be where the customers are. And so we started getting into some shopping centres.
Despite the high rent.
Yeah. And as I said, when COVID hit, you were like,
we're still paying this rent.
We're exposed here.
Yeah.
This is a pretty big exposure.
No customers and high rent.
Yeah. And we had a few sleepless nights there. But as I said, you do what you got to do. We were sort of lucky in some cases. We had some sort of understanding landlords, and in other cases we had to, as I said, take your medicine, take a hit and decide, okay, we've got to get over the ego of shutting that store, because obviously as a business owner, you don't want to think, I've got to admit defeat there. I've got to shut that store and fight another day. But in a number of cases, we shut some stores, and in hindsight, they were probably stores that you'd probably picked the wrong location or signed the wrong deal anyway. So COVID probably just rushed that decision. But we're sort of back now to post, back to what we were before COVID, and as I said, opening up some new stores, and obviously now that's led to the next challenge, which has been price rises. And sort of like every industry at the moment, we've been getting, in some cases, protein prices have gone up 60%, and you're sort of like, the price rises come through, and they're coming through from, we're getting them in manufacturing, we're sort of seeing what's coming through in our raw material purchases. And you're sort of like, well, how are we going to deal with this? Because you can't pass that on.
Not 100% of
to
it.
the customer.
You just have to wear some of it and put the prices up a bit.
That's right. So it squeezes your margins. You then need to, okay, let's refocus on our business. Our margins are squeezed. We've obviously got to get more efficient.
It's a good point you make, because, you've gone through COVID. We talked about supply, your margins, your margin is getting eroded in some way. Costs have gone up, inflation. But you've also got the fact that interest rates are now going up and people tend to get rid of, the things that aren't a necessity in their lifestyle. So at what point does your product not become a necessity to them? And do you see that as a risk in the near future?
And that's a good question and a bit of an unknown. I think in the past, during certain times, I think people do value their health and fitness, and if they see the SUPs as part of their health and fitness, it probably does survive a bit of a, if they're cutting their personal expenditures, often they see that as a necessary expenditure for a lot of people. But then the other challenge that you have to face is that some people can't afford that certain price point. So you need to start looking at, well, okay, let's start manufacturing things at a cheaper price point. Let's, bring down the number of serve, rather than selling things in a 3 kilo bucket, let's bring it out in a 900 gram sort of bag, so people can sort of, they're not feeling like that they're handing over that big lump sum of money all the time, and they can, I suppose you'd be a bit more flexible with how they purchase. It
is the joys of running a business where eyes wide open at the start, gung-ho, rip on in, bit of a side gig initially where it was like, okay, I'm doing my Ironman career, I'm having a crack at this, I've got my degree, and then all of a sudden you go, well, okay, we've now created something that is, sustainable. Now, that doesn't change that focus, because if anything, as you say, you could lose it in time if you take your finger off the pulse, or somebody else could come in with a huge amount of marketing or new products or new ways. So, yeah, there is no opportunity to rest in business, is there?
No,
really?
Definitely not. it's, as you say, when you first start, you don't know what you don't know. And, there's still plenty I don't know. But, I talked before about my accounting studies, and I think I learnt more in the first 6 months of being in my own business about accounting than what I learned in 10 years of studying at university. And it's a bit the same now. As you meet all these challenges, you're right. If you just sit there and curl up in the fetal position, no one cares. No one's going to come and give you a pat on the shoulder and say, oh, it'll be all right, mate. You've got to, as I said, you just got to keep looking for new opportunities. What can we do better to what we're doing now? And that's really all you can do. You've got to keep and just work hard. And I think we're sort of, me and Simon are still sort of entrenched in the business, and we're still working hard and doing our best. And I suppose that's all you can do. You can sort of, as I said, you can convince yourself that it's the end of the world, but that's not going to help you. You've got to just keep, everyone's in the same boat, so you just got to keep working away at what you do well, be consistent, and hopefully you'll get the result at the end.
Meanwhile, you've had a family at home the whole time while you and your brother have started this business. Were you good at the balance, or you used the word entrenched in the business there, but were you good at making sure there was still time at home?
I'd like to think that I have been. I'm sure, my family might disagree at certain times, but I think with one of the downsides, as you guys know, one of the downsides of owning your own business is that you feel like you're on call 24/7 and it's always there. It's a bit like, when you're at school and you've got an exam coming up, you're down the beach with your mates and you just got in the back of your head, I should be home studying. And business can be a bit the same, whereas you're doing things with your family and you're thinking, I've got to deal with that, I've got to deal with that, and I've got to deal with that. And so whereas you've got the downside of that 24/7, I think you've also got to look at the upside. As if you really need to do something, you can. So if my kids have got something that I really want to go to,
you don't have to ask your boss.
That's right. I can go. And if that means I've got to get up at 3 that morning and do some work, well,
you can.
I can. And if you're prepared to do it. And then I think that's where you can get caught in that mindset of, I've got to work. But you can also take the time that I haven't missed. I sort of get to most swimming carnivals, get to, as I said, I've just been up the Gold Coast with my daughter while she races, and I can combine a bit of work with that. So, overall, I think I'm very lucky in the balance I've had.
You talked about combining. Well, I do believe you sponsor the kids, employ the kids, father the kids. Is that right? I think you've got a couple of employees there.
That trip was very work-related.
As I said, child slave labour is not against the rules in our household. But no, it is interesting because when you start the business, and as you say, it's 20 odd years ago, and when you're now my eldest Ben's working in the business, and it is bizarre to sort of to think that you've got a child working in the business, and touch wood, he's studying at uni as well and working in the business, and he seems to really enjoy it. I was a bit nervous about it at first. I sort of thought, will there be, but yeah, touch wood, it's been
the tough conversations. Sorry, mate, you got to go.
Yeah, that's right. But we're pretty hard on him, and but no, he's been actually really good, and he's doing a good job, and it's good that he wants to. It's a good base, I think, to get in, and any retail. If your kid works in retail, it's a great experience. They learn to deal with people. They understand the basics of business, cash flow, all that sort of stuff. But to have that customer service and deal with different types of people is a great skill to have for life. And
is it true you're raising a couple of little champions as well? Is that right? They're following in Dad's footsteps?
Mate, I'm lucky. I've got 3 happy and healthy kids. They're all fit and active, and my middle daughter, she loves the dancing, and she's still right into her dancing, and she teaches dancing, and she's doing year 12 this year, so obviously it's a bit harder for her to do things. Ben sort of came through surf life saving. He's not doing a lot of surf life saving now, but he's, he goes to the gym and that sort of stuff. And my younger daughter, she's a bit of a mad clubby. She's a bit more like her dad. She loves the clubbies, and yeah, they all go pretty good at what they do, which makes me proud.
So what's next? Like, really, you've conquered a lot in your personal career. You've conquered a lot already in business. You seem to be raising a great family. What's on the horizon for you?
Oh, mate, I suppose, and that is one thing in terms of business advice for people. That's, if I sort of look back on our business, that's probably one thing that if I started again, how you structure your business. It was this business that just grew organically, and we probably didn't get the right accounting structures and legal structures in place to start with, so it can get a bit messy. And now we're sort of getting towards the end of our careers. It's tricky to tidy it up, and not just that, it's one of those jobs that you keep putting on the back burner. You sort of think you're busy doing other stuff, and so we want to just sort of keep going where we're going. We probably need to, people keep telling me when I speak to business people, they keep telling me I need to think about our exit strategy one day, because I suppose where Simon's 55, I'm 50, so you're going to have to retire one day. But
I wouldn't mind looking that good at 50, jeez.
There's still...
I was waiting for him to say 42, but anyway.
There's still parts of the business, that we're really passionate about the business still, and we want to keep, as I said, not with the retail, we don't want to sort of have, we want 100 shops. We want to keep opening retail stores. We've got some good partners in our business that we work with. We want to keep growing areas of our business with them. The manufacturing side of the business is always interesting, and there's opportunities for things that get manufactured in Australia. The rest of the world seems to like products that come from Australia because they know we're using quality ingredients and that sort of thing. So there's that side of the business that we're still interested in.
Well, it's been a pretty incredible 21 years. We look forward to seeing what comes over the next 21. Thanks for talking us through a bit of the journey today, and thanks for being part of the podcast.
No, thanks for having me, guys. I've enjoyed it.